Right, welcome along to the RTÉ Soccer Podcast. Raf Diallo here, and this week I'm joined by Gartland and journalist David Sneyd. We're going to review 2 rounds of SSE Airtricity League action, and there's plenty more to chat about, including a spate of injuries for Ireland players over the last 48 hours. But first off, what we're going to start off with is the breaking news that St Patrick's Athletic have parted ways with Tim Clancy in the first managerial change of the Premier Division season. In a statement, the club said they can confirm that Tim Clancy has resigned from his position as first team manager by mutual consent, and Pat's currently 7th in the table on 17 points, lost 3 on the trot with last night's Sligo Rovers defeat, proving the final straw. 5 wins, 2 draws and 6 defeats is the record for this season. So David, I know you were covering that this morning in terms of breaking news, but you might just give us the context of how they've come to this decision and how Pats have got to this point.
Yeah, well, I suppose the statement is the fact that obviously Tim Clancy has resigned and it's by mutual consent. It kind of, I don't know, it's kind of like one of them, as he said, you know what, I can't see this improving, or I've gone as far as I can maybe with how things are. It's, as you say, it's come off the back of 2 defeats, and then obviously fans would have been, you see some of the reaction after the game last night, and it was kind of, it wasn't great, you know, it wasn't very positive at all. It never is going to be, but I think maybe the manner as well of some of the games where, you know, 2 games and not having a shot on target. But just like that, and really the initial reaction more so is actually just disappointment, and a little bit obviously to be a huge sense of frustration, I'm sure, for Tim as well, because if you look at how kind of last season finished from basically the European games on, and even getting knocked out of Europe, but going out with the head held high in terms of how they performed, but then really using the second half of last season as a catalyst. And then it's kind of like a lot of the time maybe where it was a bit of rebuilding, like Adam O'Reilly going and again signing for Derry and losing that, and it just kind of felt as if even with some of the signings and from the outside you're looking at, I think, and like say like a Jake Mulroney could be really exciting and stuff, and because it just hasn't really clicked, and they just haven't been able to sustain any kind of momentum from how last year finished, it's just been quite difficult. And I'll be honest, my kind of gut reaction was thinking earlier in the season when they kind of did put that run together, I think it was 4 or 5 wins in a row, and you're kind of thinking, right, could this be it clicking back into the gear after how last year had finished? But it's just been another kind of bump in the road, and it's obviously just proven to be one too many, and they've obviously come to the decision, as the statement says, by mutual consent for Tim Clancy to go. And I suppose, yeah, it's just going to be looking to, because it's still very early in the season, to see who's actually going to be around. And I suppose the thing would be now is, like, what did he do? And if you look back at when Tim Clancy was appointed, it was at a point where they just won the FAI Cup. Stephen O'Donnell had kind of left in quite difficult circumstances in terms of how he went to Dundalk, and it seemed like the obvious candidate who should come in was someone like Tim Clancy. The work that he had done for a good few years at Drogheda, consistently kind of I don't know, again, in terms of his budget, like overachieving, and you're kind of thinking, right, go and give him that opportunity. And you're looking now, it's probably going to take a bit of time now to actually put I'm guessing, a list of people together and go and speak to different people, because I imagine it'd be a bit more of a longer process than it was the last time, because it could be, I don't know, maybe because it is still quite fresh. There's no one really jumping out straight away thinking, right, this fella has to go and get the job, you know?
Yeah, and Graham, in terms of the performances across this season, and I think it was sort of an issue last season as well for Pats, it was inconsistency, where, as we saw this season, they went on runs where they went on a relatively long winning run, but it was sandwiched by 3 defeats in a row either side of it. So in terms of first, to get your thoughts first on their performances in general, and then also where do you think they're going to go next in terms of who might take over?
I think I agree with Dave. I think the performances have just been erratic, and you never know what you're going to get. And with that, then it's hard to then know what the message is to the team. You know, you can do all your work as a manager and a coach all day, and if you don't go out and perform, if the players don't go out and perform, they have to take responsibility for that as well. I thought when Tim came in originally, he had a dressing room that was split, that would have been very friendly towards Stephen O'Donnell and the work he done, and I thought this season it was probably over the Christmas, he got his own dressing room, he got his own players in. Players had left that would have been maybe closer to O'Donnell when he was there. So in that sense, it was probably his team. He brought in reinforcements up front and Tommy Lonergan. which I felt they needed. I still thought they were light maybe defensively. Joe Redmond, when he's out, is a massive loss for them. Goalkeeper wise, I think they've struggled as well, and now Linus has come in. They never really got a consistent number one that would bring confidence into your team. But like you said, I think the 5-0 defeat up in Dundalk and the reaction to that had sort of set in at the club, and they recovered from it in terms of their performances recovered, and they got back up and running. But that feeling of unease amongst the fans about maybe Tim Clancy never really left after that defeat, and it was always lingering where he could do things really well, and they got a really good draw against Rovers, Jake Moraine with last man, and the spirit comes back in. But then as soon as something goes wrong, they were so quick to turn. And I think it set in after that 5-0 defeat to Dundalk. But it's never nice to see any man losing a job. But where'd he go? I think Pats need to, I'll be honest here, Raf, and I very rarely sort of come and say things like this. Pats need a big reset here. And from that point, I mean, Pat's Academy is based, they play their games in Blanchardstown. Okay, they train in Ballyoster. The first team train in Ballyoster, and the first team play out of Inchicore. They're fractured in terms of how they are, and they're trying to do things off the pitch well, and they've a really good youth setup, but they need to align everything and get themselves a base where their academy can train out, their first team can train out, and everything's together. And I know that they want to put money into the first team and make sure that it's competitive and build the stadium up, and I get all that. I totally agree with all of it. But there has to be plans put in place to build a club that it's not just a case of a manager comes in and he's not successful and you move him on. Give him the tools where he can train at a proper training base, that their young players can train at a proper training base every week, that the first team are involved in, and then they can build something that can be sustainable over a longer period of time. And to be honest, I think that's the aim. That should be the aim of every club in the League of Ireland. And I think if they could do that and then look to go, right, who's going to lead it and be at the helm of it and try and guide them through that, I think that might be a better way of doing it going forward.
So are you saying, at least in the short term, it should be sort of a shorter term thinking in terms of the next manager, and then maybe at some point, maybe later in the season to...
No, I think in terms of who comes in, I don't know who's available to come in. Did you go back for a steady ship in terms of Liam Buckley? I know John had mentioned them. Did you go back and just get someone to steady the ship who knows the club, who understands it, who's been there before, and have that in place? But again, I just think about aligning everything at your football club that it runs together, that everybody's training out of the same place, everybody's working towards something in the same building. I think that might be more beneficial. And if they can get a young manager in, or not doesn't have to be young, but a manager that has a track record of building that, I think it'd be really good for St. Pat's. And I think it's what ultimately St. Pat's want as well, is that they have sustainable success, that it's not just built off, well, a group of players come in, they're successful for a while, they move on. I think it's about, right, a group of players come in, they stay, but they help the younger players coming in that are training with them, and they continue that success, and it becomes a lineage of players who are associated with the club and associated with the area. Because again, I think Pats have done brilliant work off the pitch, that sell out crowds every week. They've really gone out to Inchicore and really attracted a core fan base that has stayed with them. They've really stayed with them. They've been fantastic. I can't praise them enough for what they've done on that side of it. I just think in terms of aligning their football club, it's just a little bit beaky in terms of what they're trying to do.
Yeah, and in terms of the young managers as mentioned there, David, their two most recent, Clancy and then obviously Stephen O'Donnell, they've gone with the sort of progressive young manager, and I'm wondering in terms of profiles of who's out there, who sort of fits that bill if they were to follow that sort of template again.
Yeah, well, I suppose part of it would be, who's now going to now apply for the job as well. You know what I mean? I'm sure there's going to be applications coming from different places, and whether or not that's where they're going in terms of, or if you never know, if they already made the decision and said, well, you know what, we're actually going to go with X, Y, or Z, or this is who we want to speak to at the moment. And I'll be honest, it's sort of something that now kind of over the next little while myself as a journalist will be going to be doing, is to try to actually get well, for want of a better word, get the suss on what's actually going to be happening here in terms of, are they going to try and get someone in who they want to say this whole thing of a long-term project? The point Graham makes about, things being connected, and he's right, because like the way Pats' academy is run is just sensational, really is, like, in terms of like really the quality of the players that are already in there and the players who've already come through. And you see someone like Sam Curtis, and obviously Ben McCormick in on the first team as well, Adam Murphy too. Like there's lads there who are a testament to the work that's already that is being done. And I'm guessing they're going to be saying, well, we need someone who has an understanding of that as well. But then the other point of it is as well, is they're going to need to go and get European football this year. That's the aim, that's the target. Like, and no matter what, in terms of, no matter what anyone says, like, it's the nature of first team management, especially in club football, when especially in the league, is short term. There's no getting away from it. Where, like, if you're not delivering results, you're gonna be getting under pressure, and you're gonna ultimately lose your job, which is what's happened to Tim Clancy this season. And even maybe if you go back to last season, if last season had continued on the same trajectory as the first half when he was in, then like this could have happened sooner. Do you know what I mean? Like, he stayed in the job and was given more time in the job, and also felt as if he earned more time in the job because of how last season finished and the positivity that he managed to garner by getting that group of players together, and really putting a serious run of results together. So it's going to come down to like who actually comes in for the job now, really, and where Pats see the best chance of getting success this season, because like they need European football. Like, clubs who want to compete in the League of Ireland, you need to qualify for Europe. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know Pats are fortunate to have Gareth Kelleher there, who will obviously has given them tremendous amount of financial support down through the years, but just the nature of the kind of the finance that's now involved in European football for clubs, like they have to make sure that they're qualifying for Europe. That's just the absolute bare minimum. Do you know what I mean? It really is.
Yeah, and of course, in the shorter term now, we're obviously probably going to hear in the meantime who takes charge temporarily. But in terms of the actual longer term appointment, we'll see what happens before Friday. Obviously, they're playing Cork City next down in Turner's Cross in a 7:45 p.m. kickoff, and actually on the same night as well, Shamrock Rovers, Bohemians playing each other, same kickoff time, but live on RT2 and the RT Player. And that's where we're going to turn to the 2 rounds of action in the Premier Division over the weekend. So on Friday night, Pats, and this was the first of those 2 defeats across those few days, where they were up at Derry City and lost 2-0. Dundalk won the Louth Derby 3-2 against 10-man Drogheda. Shelbourne beat Cork City 2-1. UCD earned a point against Bohemians, and then Shamrock Rovers beat Sligo Rovers 2-1. And then on Monday, or yesterday, Pats, and this was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back, lost 1-0 home to Sligo Rovers. Bohemians bounced back from dropping points against UCD by beating Cork City 5-0, who are now under pressure. We're going to hear a little bit from Colin Healy later on. And then Drogheda United and Shelbourne drew 1-1. Dundalk won 2-0 at UCD. And then in the live TV game yesterday on RT2 and RT Player, Shamrock Rovers beat Derry City 2-0, and Jack Byrne played a key role in that, scoring the second into an open goal, and also played a key part in the opening goal as well, in terms of the crossfield pass for Trevor Clark, which then ended up going to Richie Towell for a brilliant team goal. So let's listen to Jack Byrne, because he was talking to Tony O'Donoghue afterwards.
Jack, well done. I'm sure you're delighted with the 3 points. Obviously a clean sheet as well.
Yeah, it's been a long time, I think, since we won up here. Obviously got beat last year in the cup as well, and we know they're a good team. Rory, brilliant manager, and it's always difficult coming up here. They're down a few bodies, so it's probably a good time to play them.
You're on quite the run at the moment, in fairness, and that first goal was a super team goal. Obviously a long diagonal, we all love those, but the way the ball went from back to front was brilliant.
That's what I said when we were celebrating. I said that's a team. It was a real team goal. I'd like to say it's what we worked on, but we didn't really, it's just the moment. But that was a real team goal, and Richie is an unbelievable runner. Trevor's lightning quick, so just a brilliant goal, and I think we'll enjoy watching that one back here.
And your one then, it showed great awareness. I mean, for the ball to break like that, and then to see that the chance was on.
Yeah, I thought it was going to bounce back into our goal on the Astro. It took that long to go in, but yeah, it was nice. Look, I'm delighted to score. Tired now. Been a mad couple of weeks, so
We're delighted to still have you in the league, Jack. I mean, that talk of America, did it turn your head at all?
Look, just as I said, I take confidence in my own performances, and I feel like when I'm back fit and I'm playing, I think I've always done well. So I'm just, taking confidence in my performances.
All right, so that is Jack Byrne there. And Graham, what was better, the way he sidestepped that last question or his performance last night?
Yeah, he was excellent. Yeah, do you know what? He's probably the best he's played. Last year, he'd admit that he probably didn't hit the levels he has. But this year, even in the games when Rovers, even the home game against Cork, the home when they drew 4-4, some of the games, even against Shells when they're chasing it, he's the one that's driving them at the minute with the quality that he's producing, and he drove them last night. Or what I will say is, I thought defensively Rovers were excellent last night for all the stuff Jack does and the platform he gives them going forward in terms of creativity. I thought defensively they were excellent. They were solid. They didn't give Derry a sniff. I think they had their header in the first half from Duffy, and then obviously the penalty later on comes, which obviously is a sniff. I get what I'm saying, but they were defensively. Derry didn't have any sustained pressure at all in the game, and never felt like they had a chance, like they were in the game in terms of attacking wise. And that comes from Lopez. I think has been fantastic. But the way Jack plays the game and the creativity he has and his awareness to always find space in the pitch is fantastic. And it sums it up with the 2 goals that he's heavily involved in. Tayl's heavily involved in the build-up play as well, but he's on the end of it to finish it. It's a sublime goal, it really is. And it just shows the quality that's in the league, and for that to happen on national television as well was great. So, brilliant. Again, against Sligo were really good in the game. Sligo probably had one of the first teams I've seen have more possession than Rovers in Tala. Again, defensively in the defensive third, Rovers were really good in the game. Didn't give up many chances. Even the goal was a deflected shot as well. But I think Stephen Bradley had touched on and said that press wasn't good enough and they were a little bit too gapped in how they were their midfield and their attacking play was, and they fixed that. And again, I thought they were really comfortable against Derry last night. I don't think the pitch in Brandywell helps. I think Rory Higgins had even said they lacked intensity in the game. Rovers were able to come off the game, take touches and play, and I don't think Derry were in the game at all, and that would be disappointing considering you're looking at it from last year's point of view. It's first versus second. It's FAI Cup winners against the league champions, and I didn't think Derry were in the game at all. And I think Rory Higgins is right to be disappointed with the first half display.
Yeah, let's listen to Rory Higgins because he was also talking to Tony O'Donoghue.
Good segue, Raf. Good segue, bud.
Shamrock Rovers, you knew were always going to be one of your toughest opponents. The performance of Jack Byrne tonight, particularly in that first half, do you think that was a difference?
Well, I think first half it has to be said, they were much better than us. We didn't lay a glove on them really, and they controlled the game, and I didn't see it coming, to be honest, because of the intensity we played with them Friday night. We just didn't replicate it tonight, and against good sides, when you don't bring that intensity, you get punished. And I think over the course of the game, the damage was done in the first 45 minutes.
At the highest level, up against teams like Shamrock Rovers or perhaps Bohemians this season, do you need your McElhenneys and your Dummigans and your Connollys?
It's easy saying that now, Tony, but we went down to Rovers without key players earlier in the season and won. But we just, first 45 minutes, we just weren't at ourselves. We weren't ourselves. It's not acceptable, really, the lack of intensity that we played with. So hopefully now all we can ask for and all we can demand, is a reaction on Friday.
All right, Rory Higgins there. And David, obviously, as has been mentioned, I think it's mentioned at pains over the last wee while, obviously the pitch is a problem there for Derry City. But the disappointment, I guess, is also, as he's outlined there, they weren't themselves, considering how well they played in Tala in the reverse fixture earlier in the season.
Yeah, and he kind of referenced it there himself that he didn't see that first half coming, and like I'm sure, and Graham will know this, maybe I'm sure obviously managers now and coaching staffs, they have all the metrics, don't they, after games, and like it would have just been a case of recovery after the game on Friday, but sometimes that can happen, isn't it, where you put so much into a game, and then it can be just naturally difficult to go again and repeat that level of intensity, especially on an Astro pitch as well. That, like, I know for all the talk about it in terms of maybe some of the injuries that can happen, and I know obviously Stephen O'Donnell kind of brought that up a couple of weeks ago now in Dundalk and stuff, but can be difficult to replicate it in terms of that level as Rory was talking about, in terms of just miles that would have been covered and what he would have needed to have done, and that was evident. But as well as, again, he references it, but, like, you know what I mean, there was times where earlier in the season when they went to Rovers and they were the better team, they got the result, and like they kind of, the way the goal and the break as well and how they played in that game, they kind of were good value for it. And I still get the sense that could be a little bit how the season can maybe go. Like, Rovers do seem to have clicked into a little bit of form now, and I think everyone was expecting that, but just the nature of, if they can maintain that, and we see how they deal with Europe, that's what's going to be the big thing as the season goes on too, as well as how the squads will kind of carry it. You know what I mean? And if you're looking at it from the point of view of history, we can talk about the age profile of the Rovers squad, and they've brought in a couple of players now who are a bit younger again, in terms of obviously Johnny Kenny coming in and Trevor Clark, and the kind of a bit of freshness that can bring. And that's going to be a big thing as the season goes on, is how the squad are kind of utilised. Because if Rudy Higgins is already making that point now after a couple of games, making the point after kind of a couple of days to turn around and having those big games, kind of, not that was their undoing last year, but they did hit that kind of period for the guts of maybe about 6 weeks where they really, really struggled, and they can't afford to do that again, because we've seen that Rovers are capable of putting that run together and then just, like they were able to last season, obviously just manage out the league. But I don't know what Graham would think about it as well, but I kind of get the sense that it will come down to how you utilise your squad and picking it in those moments, and when to bring in players and when not to, and again, who's going to be fit as well. You know what I mean? That's going to be such a big thing, and is actually the fitness of players. And I know it's such an obvious thing to say, but for Derry to be competing, they need to have their full complement fit and ready to go all season. Really, they really do. Like, you know what I mean? I don't think there's anyone who can actually cope with losing the caliber of player that they have maybe in certain games for a prolonged period.
Yeah, because Graham, before we touch on Shamrock Rovers in the context of Bowes and the derby on Friday, in terms of the players that have come back for Derry City, Colin Whelan was one who had made 2 substitute appearances, scored twice, looked really, really sharp in terms of being in and around the box. Came on at half time yesterday against Rovers. Now, he wasn't able to have the same impact because Derry were quite flat, but then there was that little bit of a worry down in the corner where he went down and he looked really emotional afterwards, seemed to twist his knee, and obviously he's just after returning from a long-term ACL. Now, there hasn't been any update in terms of whether there actually was an injury or was it just sort of a little bit of a scare, but he's one they would certainly want to keep fit because he's looked really good since he's come back. Yeah,
he's been, again, I think McGonigal does a lot of good work, but sometimes he can, when he comes up against the likes of Lopez and even powerful defenders, he can sometimes struggle. And what I think Whelan has a way of playing. I've seen him play for UCD, and I remember him thinking he caused Rovers a bit of trouble in the UCD game one time. And I thought, boy's a good player. Like, let's be honest, he's a good player, and he's come back in and he scored the 2 goals. I think he just got a fright. You could see it in his face. He went to stand up and he got a fright, and the emotion kicked in that he's obviously wants to make sure that it's all right, and he hobbled around for the rest of the game, in fairness. But in terms of you see Rovers squad last night, and they've been building this, like Gaffney's back on the bench last night. He's been out for the last couple of games. Kenny goes on a score, and he scores against St. Pat's, and then he scores against Sligo. Graham Burke comes out of the team, comes back in, produces a wonderful display in Dalymount, scores a wonderful goal against Shelbourne. He comes out of the team. Richie Towell comes back in. He ends up scoring the goal last night. So it's not just that the Rovers have the bigger squad, it's when they're keeping them fresh, that when they come into play, they're contributing to the team. I think sometimes they're chasing players to come back fit, and then they're pushing them back in, and they mightn't be up to the pace of the game because it's a necessity thing rather than right, let's move this around. Like, Graham Burke is another example. I think Graham Burke might play Friday because he plays really well in the Bows games, and he has a knack of scoring against Bows. So Stephen might be looking at going, well, I'll leave him out for the Monday night game on an Astro, and I'll bring him back in to play in Tala against Bows on Friday. And that's the luxury that Shamrock Rovers have afforded themselves. I agree with David. I don't think they have afforded themselves that luxury with the players. It's nearly like we need to have these players playing, and as soon as they're back fit, they're straight back in. There's no building process or, right, well, let's move our squad around to see which player fits a different game, or I'm going to rest in because we have a game coming up and this player's equally able to play, but I think this ex-player might have more of an impact in the game next week. And that's just building. Rory's, it's his second full season, and that just takes a while to build that type of squad depth and squad consistency. And a lot of teams are chasing that, and Dundalk had it for years, and that's why Dundalk were so successful. All the great teams that have been successful in the league have had that consistency in the squad, that they're able to pick and choose. The manager's able to pick and choose which players he sees fit to play each game. There you need to get to that. The league, we said after 2 or 3 games doing this podcast, it's 13 games in, and the league has taken a familiar look to it. The only outlier in that is Bohemians. Bohemians are sitting top of the league. If you took them out and you went Rovers, Derry, Dundalk, Sligo, you would have said, well, that would be the top 4. But then you're putting Bows in on top. So full credit to them. They've started the season unbelievably well. And what they've done really well is anytime they've had a negative result, they've bounced back with a positive result. That's been the biggest core from them this season that they probably didn't have last season. You take into the fact that Bohemians have gone full time this year as well. They're training in the mornings. They're training now at DCU. Divine, they've a big backroom staff around them, and they're doing great work in terms of getting them ready for the next game. He didn't perform against UCD the way he would have liked, but he bounced back with an emphatic win against Cork. And full credit to Bohemians that they're there on merit. You're on top of the league by how many points you're getting. That's where they are, and it makes Friday night's game even more intriguing now.
Yeah, and obviously the gap with that UCD result, it sees that Shamrock Rovers coming within 4 points of them now, and obviously I think Shamrock Rovers will still be favourites to go on and win it, as I think everyone pretty much said at the start of the season. But in terms of what Bohemians learned from the first derby of the season, which isn't that long ago, I mean, I was at it myself, and Bows started brilliantly. Shamrock Rovers weathered the storm, and then their quality told towards the end. What can Bows learn this time in terms of responding to that and putting in a 90-minute performance against what is the strongest squad in the league?
I think they just concentrate on the game first and foremost. There was a lot of talk around going into the game last time, and again, the game still has to be played. Focus on the game. They did start the game really well. They started with a high tempo, but once the game settled, they needed to counteract what Shamrock Rovers were doing in terms of controlling their midfield. Jack Bourne pulled out into inside right channels. Graham Burke pulled out into inside left channels, and they tried to pin Bohemians back. It left our fullbacks a little bit isolated, and then the wingers are running back and doing too much work, and they took the legs out of Dylan Connolly and Declan McDade on the other side. So they need to find a way to counteract Rovers' wing backs in their midfield and their box 4 in midfield. Again, being happy to sit in the shape and saying to Rovers, right, you can have it to a certain point and then we'll nick it. I think when the game did settle down and Rovers found a way of playing, Bows were still pressing them, thinking, right, we're going to win it back. And Rovers by that stage had found the spaces and the holes that they knew the way to play through. They needed to find their own way of playing as well when they're on the ball. I think later on when they were chasing the game, especially, they started going direct into Afolabi, and when it wasn't working, they maybe didn't have a second plan to go, right, let's do dropouts of midfield ourselves. Let's get 2v1s against Rovers' wing backs in wide areas by one of our midfielders dropping out. Our winger can come inside, or a fullback can go. There wasn't any sort of patterns in that way. It was all like a little bit of blood and thunder to try and get back into the game, to show that, this is a derby and we care, but there needs to be a bit more guile about them in terms of when they haven't got the ball and understanding where Rovers are strong, and when they have got the ball and understanding how they can try and create something for themselves.
Because that's actually just that.
Yeah, play the game with their head as well as their heart, like, you know.
I was going to say, Greg, it's a good point, because even, again, Raf, because again, you're only sitting beside me at that match, only in the start of the game, it looked as if that's what Bohs were doing. You know, Ali Cute was dropping in and was causing them a bit of problems, and then Dylan Connolly made a couple of runs from out from in, and it kind of had caught Rovers on the hop a little bit, and like Lee Grace made an unbelievable tackle to stop Dylan Connolly scored, and Ali Q had a good chance. And then after that, as you say, Rovers they just took hold of the game, and Bohs weren't able to get back into it. And you were kind of thinking, especially at home, if Bohs had got one of those chances, the crowd was up, and maybe would have helped to Bohs then settle in with that lead, because it did look as if they were marrying those two aspects that Graham was saying about having that bit of craft about them, as well as having the energy and all the rest of it. And it kind of this, you can look at it two ways, just in terms of whether or not Bohs will be able to maintain it, because, like as you say, they are full time now. It's not as if it was the previous regime, and even though they would have been training nearly every evening anyway, where they were training in the evening times, and we lads still working and all the rest, like fitness wise, I don't think there's going to be an issue with them kind of lasting the pace of the season. It's just how they kind of got into the pattern of, can you see the kind of pattern now of their season a little bit, where maybe they will have the odd bad result, maybe the draw here or lose, and yeah, they'll have that character that Declan Devine has spoken about, where they'll come back. I don't think that's going to be a pattern that can sustain a championship to win a league. If you're going to be dropping points like that, and then fair enough showing a bit of resilience, because it is that pattern now. It's 3 or 4 times now where that's actually happened. Whereas I think it'd be more than enough to make sure that they qualify for Europe, which, let's be honest, I think that's what the target, if you had to set to any Bohs fan, that's going to be the target at the start of the season, or that'll be what you'll achieve. They would have absolutely gone for it, considering the issues after last season when Keith Long left, and a little bit of sense of the drift that maybe had gone in there. And fair play to Declan Devine, because he's got a grip of the club, absolutely. Like he's a fantastic job that he's done so far. But you kind of hope that, like any set of fans, like the Bohs fans, they're top of the league now. Like that excitement comes with it. And don't get me wrong, there'll be lads there who'll say, you know what, they'll know they're gut instinct. It's going to be tough to sustain, especially as I said, the kind of pattern of how the season now is beginning to take with how the kind of results have gone. But I don't know, sometimes you can get momentum, and if they can go to Tally, especially after how Rovers were so in control and dominant after pretty much the 10th minute in Daly Mill Park, but if they can go there and put on a performance that does kind of marry those two aspects, where they can frustrate and they can then show that little bit of class that they do have. Like, they have good players who can, like, as you can see, like against Cork, they're able to pick them apart and score 5 goals, and like, they've absolutely got players who can do it. And then it's a case of sometimes that momentum can kind of, players can get swept up by a little bit, and the positivity, and then there's still going to be time in the summer to maybe add reinforcements. And it's just, don't get me wrong, like I'll no doubt will have people peppering me for saying it, but I would love to see Bohs get a positive result on Friday, just because, like, if Rovers were to do it, it just ratchets us up their momentum again, and you could just see them taking off even more, because they've already done it essentially, haven't they? There was the run they're on. But in terms of seeing a full on, because let's be honest, it'd be class to see it, it's a full on title race between Bohs and Rovers. Even though it's early, I kind of feel as if for Bohs themselves, and even for maybe some of the doubters who might still say, well, are they capable of staying there, if they can go and do what Graham has said by being clever as well as being not cunning about it, but you have to have that element to it as well, you know what I mean? I know this has gone on a ramble. I had someone complain to me about social media about the scourge of time wasting in football, and I'm thinking, guys, of all the things that is wrong with football, giving out about fellas time wasting should not be one of them, should not even be in the top 10. I don't think, and as someone pointed out, I don't think I've ever seen a fella tell a goalkeeper to hurry up taking a goal kick when they're winning 1-0. Do you know what I mean? But anyway, sorry, I digress. That was just in my head because there was someone peppering me on social media about that. I always seems to be Bohs or Rovers fans doing it too.
Yeah.
And then they complain about time wasting, and then complain that there's 10 minutes stoppage time added on. You're like, you can't have it both ways. Like, that's the bit you're laughing at. Oh, where did you get 5 minutes from? Your keeper's bleeding Tiny's lace for the last 2 minutes, you know?
Yeah.
That's the new one, isn't it? The goalkeeper one that's the new. That is one that kind of gets me nerves, but it's one that the ref should have a bit of cop onto now at this stage, where think it was actually Derry City against Pats early in the season. After they were struggling for the first 10-15 minutes of the game. Pats were all over them actually, and then the goalkeeper Brian Maher goes down, and then straight away they're all in, and they were able to rejig their midfield. They brought Ollie O'Neill in from the wing more centrally, and they totally took control of them. But anyway, I digress.
Anyway, speaking of Derry City, their next match, and they have a tricky trip to Drogheda. But since Drogheda had beat them up at the Branduel 5 games ago, Drogheda haven't been able to win since and have lost 3 of their games. But they're still, ticking away well. Even in the derby, Graham, I mean, they went down to 10 men, but they showed a lot of resilience to almost get something there.
They're being competitive, which is what we'd expect, but they're always in the game. You look at even like they go 1-0 up against Shells even. They're 2-0 down against Dundalk with 10 men. They come back to 2-2. I was talking to a few people from Drogheda there recently, and they love how competitive the team is. They love the fact that they play for each other. They love the fact they play for the town. And they're right behind them. I think the crowds are up even more so than when we were, successful up there, which is great to see. So like you said, I think Draper's been really good for them, gives them a focal point to play off, and then the likes of Rooney and Darren Markey are running off him because they know that there's something to run off, whether it's a flick on or he's going to hold it up and link the play. So I think he's done a great job. Kevin Doherty has been fantastic for them. And he just makes them make sure that the game is competitive, and sometimes they mightn't play open attractive football at times, which that's well and good, but they're playing effective football. They will play. Deegan in midfield will play. They always play little passes, but when it's on to go into the front man and play off him, they will. And again, I admire that because they're playing to their team strengths, but they're competitive. I think they're a little bit unlucky. And again, because we have to be consistent on the show, I think they probably should have a penalty in the game. I think Paddy Barrett takes out the boy running into the box. He just body checks him, puts his arm across him. And I know that Damien has been on giving out about referees when decisions go against his team. I think they got away with one there. It's a fantastic free kick from Caffrey. I know people are on social media blaming the goalkeeper here, but maybe he's a little bit too far out and it goes over his head. But it's a wonderful free kick. But yeah, I think you're going to touch on it later on with Colin Healy. But Drogheda probably unlucky not to have a penalty in the game. When you watch it back and you see it's as blatant a body check stroke arm across his chest as you'll see. And I don't know how the ref hasn't spotted it or seen it. So I do think, like you said, I think that the refereeing decisions even themselves out over the course of the season.
Yeah, and then a couple of young players, David, in terms of from the Shells' point of view, just listening to Damien Duff when he was talking to the club channel, or to Darren Cleary on the club channel, when he was talking up Jad Hakiki and the impact he made when he came on, and he obviously had a long period out through injury, but he's been kind of working his way back now. And then for Dundalk, Ryan O'Kane in those 2 games over the weekend, first scoring the first goal in the derby, and then a cracking goal yesterday against UCD. Yeah. There's a couple of these young players standing out.
I know, yeah. What would be the thing? It'd be #ballers, wouldn't it? Isn't that what people would say about it? But like the O'Kane goal yesterday is great because it's kind of what you want to see in terms of finding that bit of space and then just in an instant knowing what he wants to do and then unleashing it. His technique for the goal is excellent. And it's funny because again, the people who coming through at Dundalk were probably saying, it's taking him not a bit longer because he's only baby, still very young, but people at Dundalk who would have worked with him previously would have seen that talent from such an early age. And again, it's just fostering it and having that person who can kind of bring it out. And we had this comment with Graham mentioned earlier about Rovers and about Derry and using your squads, and that's when sometimes you need a manager to know, well, do you know what, understand the character and understand maybe the body of young lads as well, and how they kind of what they can be capable of and what they can accept and what they're able to manage, because it's so important to just to use it right. And obviously with Jed Hakiki at Shells, we saw that last season where he was in the team for the period, and just I don't know. It's easy to say it, but you know, you can just see sometimes when a fella has something that other players in the pitch don't have, where how they kind of like manipulate the ball, how they use it, just how it seems to stay with them. I think that's what with Kiki, that's how it seems to be. He just seems to be just so delicate almost with the ball, you know, how he uses it. But then on the flip side of that, you don't, I mean this in the nicest possible way, you don't get into a tough team if you can't do the other side of what's going to be demanded of them in terms of how the league is as well, in terms of the physical side and all the rest of it. But it's going to be bit by bit where you kind of throw them in at the right time, give them that running game, see what's going to suit, and then know when to take them out as well, just because the nature of it, their bodies are going to need a little bit of different management. But yeah, like it's amazing over actually last night as well, some of the goals that were actually scored in the caliber. Like it's like the goal of the month for May. I don't think we're only in only in a couple of days in, but
yeah,
like, the caliber, it's incredible. Like
McManus goal, the fifth goal for Bowles last night, fantastic. McManus, like,
fantastic. But also, and like we started a conversation later about Pats, but Max Mata's goal last night for Sligo, like that for me, like that's the ultimate centre forwards goal, where you're having the bravery to come in and show for a pass from your centre back, linking it off with a one-touch pass out, and then straight away spinning, turning, and wanting to get in the box and then getting a bullet header. Like it was, if you're looking at it, like it probably won't even be in the top 5 goals in terms of catching the eye. But I was looking at it from a point of view of a striker, and you know the modern game of where it seems to be going. It's fantastic goal.
His
really
improvement this year has been fantastic. I have to say, I watched him on Friday in Tala, and I thought he was brilliant in the game as well. His hold up play, again, getting used to the league. He's planting himself a lot earlier. He's hitting people before the ball comes up. He's holding his ground more. He's linking the play better. And then he's, like you said, he is then recognising, if I'm linking the play here, I'm getting in the box. And he's physically all there, David. Like he's solid.
Look, I spoke to him. I spoke to him last week just for the piece, just previewing the Rovers game actually, because the top scorer going to play against Shamrock Rovers, you know. And like, he seems like a very relaxed fella, you know, calm and all the rest. But like that's what struck me about that goal, because like he was 25 yards from goal, 25 yards from the box when he laid off. He could have easily said, well, you know what, I've done 90% of my job here. That's enough. I'll leave it. See if there's anyone further up the pitch. But he was hungry, like, you know what I mean? That's what's going to get you to be top scorer in the league. That's what could get you an extra 5, 6, 7 goals. It could be the difference, you know what I mean? And got him to 3 points in the end, you know what I mean? Like, but that's for a centre forward and for the way Sligo play, Mata, and that performance I just thought was just really good. Really, really, really good. And like even just a header, like you don't see many goals like that. You know what I mean? Like kind of just having that just bit of hungriness for it. You know what I mean? Sometimes lads seem to be happy to kind of do all the neat and tidy stuff outside the box and looks grand, but then not want to actually get in, because you could have got a clatter very easily. You know what I mean? And so it was that was an exceptional goal on a weekend, a long weekend of some really,
like you said, Caffrey's goal, Powell's goal, McManus goal, Jack Bourne's goal. I know it's from a distance, but yeah, there was top goals all Monday night.
Yeah.
By the way, mention to the Ireland under 15s that won the tournament over in Italy as well.
I saw that.
Brilliant, beating Italy in the final 2-1.
A lot of good young players coming through, and it's Jason Donoghue, isn't it? Who's still he's still over the under 15s. Yeah, good fella. Have had the chance to chat to him before. And Sligo Rovers, you said there, like they've had a lot of inconsistency. The one consistency, of course, is Max Mata in front of goal, but 19 points and 5th in the table at the moment. And let's listen to Colin Healy now, Cork City manager, because while the clubs above them are pulling away from them, Cork seem to be getting reeled in by UCD at the moment. So let's listen to him speaking, and he seemed quite furious after the 5-0 defeat to Bohemians.
Colin, you didn't look happy at half-time. That's sending off. Any thoughts?
It's sending off, it's the other one before it. The other one before, we're in goal and they blow it up. And you seen that as well, didn't you? It's a disgrace. As we had it last week as again with Shells, we had a penalty and it was... They're getting nothing. And I don't get me wrong, is that okay, we got to send it off. Decision is that okay, they're saying Ali kicked out and all that kind of stuff. It's hard enough to come up here to Bowes to play with 11 players down to 10. Yes, it's very difficult as well. Okay, yes, we got beaten 5-0. We tried to go for it towards last 20 minutes and they picked us off. Okay, that's fine. But the referees are killing us. Excuse my language, they're killing us. killing us.
But
But you not see that?
But what about the sending off? I mean, have you any qualms about that itself?
I think it was a bit harsh. I mean, the referee didn't get it. If it was Leno, Northside gave it, and it's a fair distance to see it from there. Leno didn't see it here, so there was another free in the second half. Whereas that he didn't see it down that side, so that was closer. So I'm a small bit strange in that one.
And overall, the context of the game, I mean, it's still 5-0 though, you know.
Yeah. 5-0. We're down to 10 players.
Yeah.
Listen, both are a good side. They're top of the table, so it's always going to be difficult. You know?
Any positives you can take out of today?
No.
Absolutely none. In terms of the way your team is structured or the way you played or responded.
But listen, we're in the game, and obviously when the player gets sent off, when I get sent off, it's going to be. We're defending. We have a great chance when it's 2-0. And came Murphy to pull off a great save.
How did he miss that?
Yeah, well, listen, he's missed it. He's pulled off a great save. He's a very, very good goalkeeper. Pulls off one after 2 or 3 minutes with Keats. He's in with a header, but it's just the decisions again. It's every week.
Okay, so that is Cork City manager Colin Healy. So that's after the 5-0 against Bohemians, and obviously the main extract from it is in regards to the referees, Graham. But I think if you're looking at why he's so frustrated, it's it's a fourth defeat in a row. So the frustration probably comes from that, and also the fact like UCD getting the draw up at Bohemians and this run that Cork City are on actually began with the 1-0 defeat up at the UCD Bowl, and I guess it's all of that that's just kind of building up in regards to Healy.
Yeah, like you said, and he's not turning on his players, which full credit to Colin. Like, you know, he seems like that type of manager that will always back his players. It has been a tough run for them. I think, like you said, I think he'll be disappointed with the UCD, and then, you know, I think they lose to. It's a tight loss to Shells as well. I know they're 2-0 down, and then Whitmarsh scores late on to maybe give them a fighting chance, but they're in the games as much as they can be, obviously, and then they go and lose 5-0 to Cork. The incident he's talking about is again an advantage one, that they've gone basically up, back, through, and the fella who set it back has been hit, but the through ball is already gone, and the referee decides to bring it back. And it was similar to one we done.
Up in Derry, wasn't it?
Yeah, we done a game for RTÉ up in Derry, and McGonigal, I think, was through on goal about to hit a strike, and the referee decides to pull it back and like just let it play out, let the game breathe for a little bit. And what's to say that you can't, like, I know they say there's an 8-second rule where you can bring it back, but just let the game breathe. And then when you decide to bring it back, you can make the decision then, and you can say, listen, you have no advantage, it was stopped, you're still getting your free kick. And if the other team want to complain about it, that's on them. But they're the ones that have fouled and have gotten away with an advantage. So I think the disappointment comes in there. The Gilchrist one, I didn't see that incident. I don't know if he kicks out. If he has kicked out, and the referee decides it's a red card, then Ali needs to look at himself there and realise they're in a tough fight, and he can't be doing things like that to set his team back. But again, Colin, he's just getting frustrated. You can see the frustration in him, but it's not like him to get that annoyed. He's quite relaxed and level-headed, Colin, and to see him get that annoyed, you can understand his frustration. But he'd probably be more upset with the fact that, you know, you look at Bowles 5, Cork 0, it doesn't look great, but there is circumstances behind it. They're down to 10 men. They're in the game to start with. They probably have a chance to go ahead, and the ref courts them. And I think when we've seen it in Tala, when they do go ahead, they're willing to hold on and fight and dig in and try and, you know, hold on for a result. And I think he feels that if they can get goals and score, that they'll hold on and get results. And maybe he feels that they never got the chance to do that.
Yeah, and then down in the first division, in terms of, well, obviously they had the 2 rounds of action as well, but the end result in terms of table, Galway United still 7 points clear of Waterford. However, they had won 11 games in a row, but then kind of unexpectedly lost 1-0 up at Longford Town with Mohamed Boudiaf scoring the winner there. However, Graham, nothing really changes because, of course, Waterford couldn't capitalise and ended up losing 1-0 at home to Wexford.
Aaron Dobbs, with a header, he does brilliantly for it, in fairness. Actually, he's always in the middle of the goal, Aaron, and he gets his head on it. But Waterford were flying since Long came in, and obviously that's a derby. But the fact that the first time Galway dropped points and it's the first time Long has dropped points since he's gone in at Waterford would have been a bit of a double blow for them. Galway's record in Longford isn't that great neither, from what I know. So Longford probably would have fancied it, and it's a big result for them and a big result for Henderson in there, because him and Gavin Pearce have gone in and they've tried to bring a lot of young players through, and they're trying to change the way the club is in terms of making sure that some of their academy players are getting more game time, and I think they brought on 2 young lads in the game too, so it's great to see that. And but it's not as bad a result for Galway as it could have been if Waterford had got the victory against Wexford.
Yeah, and in the kind of mid-table part of it, from 3rd to 9th, just 8 points separating them now after that Longford Town win, with Athlone Town in 3rd and Cove just behind them, and Bray down to 5th. And in the Women's Premier Division, Wexford beat Shelburne 1-0, a crucial result for Wexford there, who have made a slow start to the season. Bows won 3-1 at Cork City. Sligo Rovers were beaten 3-1 at home by Athlone Town. And then Galway United, who have been really, really good this season, winning 2-0 at DLR Waves. But the big game was leaders Peamount against Shamrock Rovers, and it ended up being a 0-0 draw. Karen Duggan missed an 89th minute penalty for Peamount that would have stretched their lead, but the goalkeeper who did save it was her housemate Amanda Budden. So I'm sure there'll be conversations in the house there. And Amanda Budden was also speaking to us afterwards. So here she is.
Interview with Shamrock Rovers, Amanda Budden. Amanda, congratulations, not just on the penalty save, but overall you had to save another one straight after that.
Yeah, look, it was a bit hectic there towards the end, last 10-15 minutes. We were really on the back foot and they were really pressing high, but yeah, look, Penno was 50-50 and I'm just glad I went the right way. And yeah, look, the girls were great in front of me as well and charging everything down, so yeah, it was good. I think we'll take the point.
Karen Duggan, usually deadly from the spot. I'm sure you've faced her before.
Yeah, like I live with Karen, so we were winding each other up before the game, but yeah, look, I thought she was going to go the other side, but yeah, no, look, she's a great penalty taker, has taken many and scored probably 90% of them, so yeah, I'm just glad I saved that one.
Shamrock Rovers remain unbeaten, the only side unbeaten in the Premier Division. Yeah. How far can you go this year?
Look, it's the first year in the league. If you said to us before, when this started, you get a point off Shells at home, point at Pisa at home and an unbeaten run, don't think anyone would even believe it. So look, we'll keep our heads down and keep driving on, and yeah, we're just happy with a draw, I suppose, but yeah, we'll keep going.
I know strikers set themselves targets. What about goalkeepers? I mean, how many penalties would you like to save this year?
Look, I'll take that one, but yeah, look, I don't know, penalties are hit and miss, but yeah, obviously it's nice for a keeper to keep a clean sheet. Like, even regardless with the wins, I don't even think we have that many clean sheets, so that's definitely something we need to work on, just keeping the goals to a minimum as possible. But yeah, no, look, the girls in front, they're brilliant. Like, they've played, nearly 90% of the team is in and out of Ireland squads from underage, so I'm just glad that it's going in the right direction this year.
And that is Amanda Budden, Shamrock Rovers goalkeeper, and she was there discussing making a penalty save against her housemate Karen Duggan. But anyway, in terms of the table, Peamount United top of the table at the moment on 19 points, 3 clear of Galway United, who have made a brilliant start to the season, and then they're 1 point clear Shamrock Rovers, who have a game in hand. And Katie McCabe also involved in Arsenal's Champions League semi-final against Wolfsburg. Yesterday was the stand-in captain. Unfortunately for Arsenal and Katie McCabe, they ended up losing 5-4 in aggregate after extra time. And she did hit the crossbar at one point, which would have put them ahead, but alas, that did not happen. Just in terms of the Premier League, though, Evan Ferguson, Graham, you know, we've talked about his future at length on this podcast, but it's more set in stone now. 5-year deal with Brighton that runs until 2028, and I suppose for him, well, obviously from the Brighton point of view, it gives them a lot of control, but for him as well, that's a lot of stability to sort of build on quietly for the next while.
Yeah, correct. It does both. I think it gives the club control and Evan control as well. I think if a bid comes in, it needs to be the right bid. I think it stops the thoughts of maybe signing and becoming a bit part player at a club that might be bigger than Brighton. I touched on this before, where if Man United come in to sign him, they make him his marquee signing instead of, you know, having somebody that's waiting in the wings and they can use him and not use him. Where I think the extra 5 years to get him out of Brighton, they're going to have to pay considerable more money, and that ups his standing with the new team that he's going into. So in that sense, I think it's a great deal for both parties. I think it's a great deal for Evan, and I think it's a great deal for Brighton, because, like you said, it adds value to everything they're trying to do. Him as a player at the football club, and his value to the football club in terms of a transfer fee going forward. So I think it's really good decision making from Evan and his dad Barry, I'd say.
Yeah, and in terms of last week's matches in the Premier League, so that round of action that was midweek, apparently it was the first time since football was invented in 1992 that no Irish player has started a full round of Premier League games, and that's because Gavin Bazunu was dropped. Seamus Coleman didn't, and we'll talk about Seamus Coleman very shortly. Didn't feature. Seamus Coleman didn't feature in Everton's previous game, and then other players who maybe would have been in contention, like Evan Ferguson, also out with injury. But I mentioned Seamus Coleman because unfortunately last night against Leicester, David, I mean, probably people have seen the tackle. Some people might not have been able to see it live because the match was on at the same time as the Derry City Shamrock Rovers game. But Sumare kind of goes into him at speed, and unfortunately his leg is planted and it looks like a bad knee injury. Won't know the extent until probably later today or later this week. But coupled with Matt Doherty being not getting any game time at all for Atletico Madrid, and a fixture against Greece coming up in about a month and a half, it's concerning on that side of the pitch for Stephen Kenny.
Yeah, no, massively so. It was like, as you say, like kind of when you watch the game, like last night, it kind of was more so a case of you getting the clips sent through to you on the phone. Because again, I wasn't watching that game live, and you see it and it looks bad, and you see him getting stretchered off, and I'm giving the fist salute to the Everton fans and to the players. You're kind of hoping that it's not a serious one. You know what I mean? That hopefully it's maybe just I don't know, an impact injury that can be dealt with, and you could be back in a few weeks. I would imagine just the nature of the stage of the season, Everton are at, it could be difficult for them to get back before the end of the season, and then it's just, as you say, it's just waiting to see what the actual proper extent is of the injury, and you're just dreading that it's something bad, especially again because you say like the games that Ireland have in June, and also a stage as well that Everton are at this season, and what's on the line for them, because it looks now as if they could be getting relegated, and then obviously from Seamus's point of view as well, he's had a couple of niggles this season. He's back from that hamstring issue. He's already come back from one career threatening when he had that horrific leg breaking tackle when he played against Wales, and you're just hoping that this is something that he can get back from quickly. Really is,
Yeah, because also earlier in the day, David, I mean, there was the Chiedozie Ogbene one as well. So he was in action for Rotherham United, who have secured safety in the championship. And then there's a tackle from behind, and he goes down clutching his hamstring about 19 minutes in, isn't able to continue. And again, when you look at the time frame to that game against Greece on the 16th of June, again, it's more little worries at this time of the season for Kenny.
Yeah, and like that, it's just the nature of it. You would lads coming off the back of just grueling long seasons. You mentioned Evan Ferguson. He's had a couple of injuries. You know what I mean? He's had that's the ankle one, the issue with the knee, where he had the bone bruising on the knee, and like again, but that's something that could still be managed. But going in, it's just the nature. But that's just the nature of international management. I think I've said this before, where like players coming in at different times, and there's always going to be issues and niggles, and especially going into a game in June, it's probably the downside where you just lads need time to just have their bodies to recover and to rest, and just the nature of it, they're not going to have it, because you can be sure that there'll be an awful lot of players managing stuff at this stage, just because the nature of it's coming towards the end of the season. But it's one of the things you need to talk about luck, where that's the one thing a manager does need, is a little bit of luck with those injuries, and the injuries to personnel and lads who aren't maybe playing. And that's where Ireland are going to, hopefully by the time those games come around. And in fairness, it's something that Stephen Kenny kind of actually said about, I think when he did a thing with a few of us in a hotel in Dublin a couple of months ago now, speaking about kind of realising after last year about how he manages the load for players in the summer, for the summer games, and the fact that there is that plan to go away for, I think it's like a week-long training camp in Antalya before the Greece game. And obviously since the Greece game had the actual fixture, so between they being confirmed when it was happening and now the actual timing of it, little things like it's the fact that it's going to be a nighttime game and not in the middle of Greece in the heat as well. That could hopefully bode well, but it's just going to be a case of what Kenny was saying before about managing those players when they come in and making sure that they're as close to full fitness as you can be at that stage of the season.
Yeah, and then just on the relegation battle in the Premier League, Graham, just looking at the table here, West Ham on 34 points. They have 5 games to go, so they have a game in hand on all the teams below them. So they're 15th. Leicester, as we saw last night, drawn against 2-2 with Everton in what was an entertaining game. They're on 30 points. Leeds on 30 as well. And then within the relegation zone itself, Nottingham Forest on 30, Everton on 29, and then Southampton on 24. Like, if you were calling it now in terms of who you think will probably, and I'm saying this assuming Southampton go down and don't stage a great escape, but who the other two would be who would be joining them in the championship next season?
Do you want me to buy you some time, Graham, and I'll be definitive?
Yeah, go for it, Dave.
I'm going to say Everton and Leeds.
Yeah, well,
Forest will
I think Forest will nick out.
Yeah, at least just the point.
Forest are the only team in the bottom half who haven't sacked their manager or got rid of their manager this season.
That's the one thing that I was looking at in terms of the West Ham. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, West Ham. Yeah, West Ham.
Hey, come on now. I don't want to see Leeds go down. I like Leeds.
And there is the rumour, of course, of Big Sam potentially, that was reported last night.
Well, the director of football is gone. You saw that statement came out there a few minutes ago. The director of football at Leeds is gone. But it'd be great for Forest. Sorry, on the Forest one, just obviously Andy Reid in there as well. He's one of Steve Cooper's coaches. But yeah, no, I have a feeling. I know Forest have been in there, but I just think if you look at some of the games, I
tell you what, I go with Everton and Leicester. I think Leicester's goalkeeper has been an issue for them all year, and I think he never really replaced Schmeichel. And I think when it comes down to it, and the crux of it, that'll be the difference.
He had a good game last night.
Everton, Leicester.
Interestingly enough,
what's that?
He had a good game last night. Everson, for Leicester.
In fairness, since they brought Everson in, they've been better. The boy Ward that was in before.
Ward was struggling a little bit. But
Ward was struggling. So that might change my mind as well, Raf. No.
You look at the fixtures. I kind of see. You look at the next two fixtures. Like Leicester have Fulham away and Liverpool at home. I can see Leicester getting points in those games.
What?
And then if you look. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where.
Fulham were unbelievable this year in Craven Cottage as well.
No, I know, but I just think this stage of the season, like, what are Fulham playing for now? You know what I mean? Even Liverpool.
I know, but when you,
I just think that's.
I'll go. I'm gonna for that reason, for that statement, I'm gonna go Leicester. Leicester.
But then you look at the Leeds games. Like Leeds have City away, they have Newcastle at home. That maybe they could get something like that. It's an early game, but Newcastle are flying. Newcastle. Like that could be the game where Newcastle are confirmed Champions League. I think they've pretty much already got it. But and then they've West Ham away, and then their last game of the season is Spurs. And then I was having another little look there with Everton, with Nottingham Forest, and their fixtures, and it's like they've Southampton at home next. That's their next game, and then they've got Chelsea away. So Chelsea away is a given. That's 3 points, not a bother. Like anyone will go there. But I just don't know. Maybe it could be totally wrong. I can see more points for maybe a Forest and a Leicester to make sure that they stay over. Whereas with Everton and Leeds and the way things are going, I can't see them. I can't see
Everton. I can't see Everton staying up. I think it's between Forest, Leeds, and Leicester. But I'm gonna go. Yeah, it's always tricky, with this one because you're like you said, that could be playing in games that are nothing games for other teams, and
that's the only thing.
Like you said, I think Leeds' fixture list has killed them. Like,
yeah, well, they're all circling the drain anyway, so whichever one slips out first anyway. But we're just about to wrap up, but I had one question for you, David, before we go. So what is the United Church League? I saw it in my email there in one of your responses.
Oh, sorry. I was only messing. I know, just big win last week. Gone from promoted from Division 2 of the United Churches League. So what you call it? As a bit part experienced player in that team, we took great. I'm surprised you can't tell by my voice because we were celebrating out on Sunday, and I'm still a bit hoarse and still a bit stale. So you have to celebrate these monumental achievements.
All right. Well, we'll try and source highlights and maybe player ratings or something as well, with plenty of interest. But anyway, that brings us to an end for today. And as I said earlier on, we have Shamrock Rovers against Bohemians live on RT2 and RT Player on Friday night. So well worth tuning in. Second derby of the season. But David Sneyd and also Graham Gartland, thanks a mil for coming on this week.
Pleasure, lads. Thanks.